Hi friends! Welcome to our second and last bonus story time for this week. Today we're going to start in Genesis chapter 48, beginning with verse 1, so please read along with me. After this, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," he summoned his strength and sat up in bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and he blessed me and said to me, 'I am going to make you fruitful and increase your numbers. I will make of you a company of peoples and will give this land to your offspring after you for a perpetual holding.'" Okay, so Jacob is just rehearsing this promise that God has reiterated through the generations to this family. And so Jacob is just telling Joseph, look, God appeared to me, said that we're going to be fruitful and increase, which should remind you a little bit of that creation language, fruitful and multiply, right? And you're going to, that God's going to give them Canaan, basically, as a perpetual holding. So Jacob is just reminding Joseph of God's promises here. Verse 5, "Therefore your two sons who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt are now mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are. As for the offspring born to you after them, they shall be yours. They shall be recorded under the names of their brothers with regard to their inheritance." Okay, so here Jacob lays claim to two of Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, which was his prerogative as the one who was the leader of the family, the patriarch, and also the one who currently held this promise from God. And so he's saying Manasseh and Ephraim are going to be two more of my sons, so I guess his total is now up to 14. And any kids, any sons you have after this, they belong to you, but these two are mine. Okay, when we turn now to verse 7, it's a little hard to follow Jacob's train of thought here. So Jacob has just said that Manasseh and Ephraim are going to be his. The rest of future children will be Joseph's. And then he kind of explains it by referencing Rachel and her death. So let's read verse 7. "For when I came from Padan, Rachel, alas, died in the land of Canaan on the way, while there was still some distance to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem." So it's unclear why he's mentioning Rachel here in this way, and whether somehow he's connecting, like Rachel didn't make it to Canaan, so it's more important that more of her offspring are included somehow. And so making these two sons of Joseph belong to Jacob also makes them belong to Rachel and increases her presence in the promised land, maybe, I don't know. It's also possible that there was some discomfort about the fact that these two sons were born to an Egyptian woman, and that this was a way of sort of reclaiming them for the Israelites, and here for Rachel. It's just not entirely clear, or at least it isn't to me. So I'm going to keep reading. Verse 8. "When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he said, 'Who are these?' Joseph said to his father, 'They are my sons whom God has given me here.' And he said, 'Bring them to me, please, that I may bless them.' Now the eyes of Israel," that is Jacob, "the eyes of Israel were dim with age, and he could not see well. So Joseph placed them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them." Okay, this should remind us of another sort of deathbed scene where blessings were involved. Do you remember when Jacob came to his father Isaac, who was also aged, also couldn't see well? Remember, Jacob put animal skins on his arms and on his neck to try to trick and successfully tricked his father into thinking that he was his brother Esau. So we kind of have this echo of this previous time in Jacob's life, and we'll see how this all goes down this time now that Jacob is the one on his deathbed. Verse 11, "Israel said to Joseph, 'I did not expect to see your face, and here God has let me see your children also.' Then Joseph removed them from his father's knees, and he bowed himself with his face to the earth. Joseph took them both, Ephraim in his right hand toward Israel's left, and Manasseh in his left hand toward Israel's right, and brought them near him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. Okay, so Joseph brings his sons to be blessed by his father, who's now their father, because he kind of adopted them. It's very confusing. And the right hand was considered, the blessing hand. And so Joseph positions them the way he wants them, with the oldest receiving the blessing. And then Jacob crosses his hands, so thus blessing Ephraim with his right hand rather than Manasseh. This is so interesting given what we know about Jacob, right? He was the younger brother who, it wasn't Isaac's will to bless Jacob over his older brother, right? It was Jacob's conniving that made that happen. But here it's Jacob's will to bless the younger son over the older. So it's a little bit of a surprise, but also we probably should have seen it coming given how the younger brother seems to be the one who comes out ahead at least in this family. All right, verse 15. He blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my ancestors Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, bless the boys, and in them let my name be perpetuated and the name of my ancestors Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude on the earth." Okay, I actually want to read this again to you. Notice in verse 15, it says that Jacob, he blessed Joseph. But the blessing itself is on the two boys. So Joseph is being blessed through this blessing given to his sons. And notice the mention of ancestors, Abraham and Isaac, and how they feature at the beginning of this blessing and at the end. Let's read it one more time. Verse 15, he blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my ancestors Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, bless the boys." So he's calling on God and recalling all these ways that God has walked with his family. He's calling on God to bless the boys. "And in them let my name be perpetuated, and the name of my ancestors Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude on the earth." So he calls on God to bless them, the God of his fathers. And then he says, "And let our name," not let God's name, let our name, let my name Jacob, and my father Isaac, and my grandfather Abraham, let our name be perpetuated through these boys, and let them grow into a multitude on the earth. So that's just, again, reiterating that the expectation of that promise to be realized, that this family that was promised way back in Abraham that they were going to be a great nation. It's taken many generations, but finally it's kind of cooking with gas, and Jacob wills that this sort of fruitful multiplying will continue, which it will, which is what causes some problems in Egypt. Okay, verse 17. When Joseph saw that his father had laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, "Not so, my father. Since this one is the firstborn, put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, By you, Israel will invoke blessings, saying, "God make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh." So he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, "I am about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you again to the land of your ancestors. I now give to you one portion more than to your brothers, the portion that I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and with my bow." Notice here that Jacob says that this blessing will catch on in Israel. God make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh. It's going to become this colloquialism, a way of talking about how, being greatly blessed. This is indicating that both of these boys are going to end up, in a pretty good situation, but Ephraim is still going to be ahead of Manasseh. And then this is interesting. As Jacob is about to die, he says, again, that God will eventually bring them back home. But he also says, I now give to you one portion more than to your brothers. The portion that I took, that doesn't matter. One portion more than his brothers. And so let's think about this for a minute. There were 12 brothers, right? And now there are going to be these 2 additional ones. So you need to understand that the way inheritance worked was however many brothers there were, they split the inheritance into that many portions plus 1. And the oldest got 2 portions. So in this case, before Ephraim and Manasseh were brought on board, Reuben would have gotten 2/13 of the inheritance because their 12 sons would have been broken into 12 plus 1, and then the oldest gets 2. So that would have been Reuben's portion. But now there are 14 sons, right? Plus 1 will equal 15, and Reuben will get 2 portions, 2/15. Okay, so this minimizes how much all the boys get in inheritance, right? Because we've added 2 more sons. But then Joseph, because his 2 sons are added, he gets his portion, and then Ephraim and Manasseh get a portion too. So Joseph, through his sons, ends up with 3 portions, which is 1 more than Reuben, the oldest, who got 2. Now this gets really confusing because don't Ephraim and Manasseh belong to Jacob now, so they're not really Joseph's. But anyway, that's kind of what is being communicated here, is that the upshot is, in the end, Jacob was able to find a way to continue to favor Joseph by claiming these sons. Okay, so if you're like me and you get concerned and hung up on the math, how do we get from 14 sons to 12 tribes? Well, this is a little bit of mathematical gymnastics, but the Levites end up not really counting as a tribe because they become the priestly class, and so they don't have like a land like a tribal land. They have cities that they can live in within the different tribal lands, so they don't get their own like land designation. So they kind of pass away out of the 12 tribes of Israel because they have this other role. It's not that they don't continue to exist, but they have this like specifically assigned role, and it's just a little bit different. I'm not explaining this well because I don't completely understand it myself. And then Joseph ends up not having like a tribal land named after him. Instead, there is a designation for Ephraim and a designation for Manasseh. So if you take the 14 and you take away the Levites for one reason, and Joseph kind of goes away because Ephraim and Manasseh sort of take his place when it's time to dole out the promised land, that's how we get to 12. That's how we maintain 12, because maintaining 12 is probably more important than anything else, because 12 is this whole complete number. So we've got to find a way to maintain the 12 tribes of Israel, even though Jacob had to come in at the 11th hour and mess that up by claiming Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay, well, that's probably clear as mud at this point. So we will move on and take a look at just a little bit more here. We're going to skip most of chapter 49, where Jacob kind of talks about each one of the tribes or each one of the sons, and either kind of rehearses things that have gone on in those sons' lives, or sort of speaks to how those tribes will evolve, what that will look like. But we're not going to read all of that. You're welcome to if you would like to. We're going to jump ahead instead to Jacob's death, which is in chapter 49, beginning with verse 29. Then he charged them, saying to them, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my ancestors, in the cave in the field of Ephraim the Hittite, in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre in the land of Canaan, in the field that Abraham bought from Ephraim the Hittite as a burial site. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried. There Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were purchased from the Hittites. When Jacob ended his charge to his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Okay, so it's important for Jacob to get back to Canaan, which will be the promised land. So he says, when I die, go bury me with my ancestors. chapter 50, verse 1. Then Joseph threw himself on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. Joseph commanded the physicians in his service to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. They spent 40 days in doing this, for that is the time required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. Embalming wasn't practiced in Israel, but it probably was done here to Jacob because they are in Egypt right now. Okay, verse 4. When the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph addressed the household of Pharaoh. If now I have found favor with you, please speak to Pharaoh as follows. My father made me swear an oath, he said. Made me swear an oath. He said, I am about to die. In the tomb that I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore let me go up, so that I may bury my father. Then I will return. Pharaoh answered, Go up and bury your father as he made you swear to do. So Joseph went up to bury his father. Okay, so Pharaoh allows him to go do this for Jacob. And so Jacob is settled, buried with his ancestors in Canaan. And now it seems the brothers get nervous that now that Jacob is gone, that Joseph is finally going to seek retribution for what they did to him. Let's pick up at verse 15. Realizing that their father was dead, Joseph's brothers said, What if Joseph still bears a grudge against us and pays us back in full for all the wrong that we did to him? So they approached Joseph, saying, Your father gave this instruction before he died. Say to Joseph, I beg you, forgive the crime of your brothers and the wrong they did in harming you. Now, therefore, please forgive the crime of the servants of the God of your father. Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also wept, fell down before him, and said, We are here as your slaves. But Joseph said to them, Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good, in order to preserve a numerous people, as he is doing today. So have no fear. I myself will provide for you and your little ones. In this way he reassured them, speaking kindly to them. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's household. And Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were also born on Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will surely come to you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. So Joseph made the Israelites swear, saying, When God comes to you, you shall carry up my bones from here. And Joseph died, being 110 years old. He was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. All right, so Genesis ends with reiterating the forgiveness that Joseph offers to his brothers. The brothers are living in peace and harmony. Joseph lives to an old age and gets to see many generations of his descendants. And Joseph makes them promise that when God brings them out of Egypt, that they will take his bones they will take his bones with them, which they actually do in Exodus when God brings them out of slavery in Egypt. So we end Genesis with sort of a rosy picture that all is well, that they're settled, that things are looking up, which sets us up for what we will read on Sunday when things take a bad turn for God's people. Thanks for reading along with me. I hope you have a great weekend. Stay cool out there. Bye.